Welcome to PYO Interviews, Pilgrimage Yoga Online. I'm Sujantra, and today we have with us Danielle Abisaab, who is the founder of Union Square Yoga, which you might think is in New York City, but actually it's in Beirut, Lebanon. And in 2005, Danielle moved from New York City to Lebanon in order to open the studio that she has now created. So we'd like to welcome you to the interview, Danielle.
Hi, hi, Sujantra. It's really nice to be here.
Great,
Uh,
good. It's really good to have you. My first big question is from New York all the way to Beirut. What inspired you to do that?
it was pretty accidental coming back to Beirut. I had been living in New York for quite a while, working as an architect for about 8 years. Um, my mom is American and my dad is Lebanese, so I've always been in New York for quite a while. And even when I lived in Paris and Beirut, I used to go back on a regular basis. But what brought me back to Beirut was I had no intention of leaving New York. I just felt a bit curious of investigating the yoga scene in Beirut, which at the time had, just started to bud. And I needed a little break from New York, and I thought to myself, let me go back to Beirut, check the scene out, maybe teach a little bit, and just take a break from New York. And I got here in 2005, about 1 month before they assassinated the prime minister, Rafiq Hariri at the time, and that put a lot of things in motion. And I started teaching yoga very quickly, and started to notice that I was probably a lot more needed in this part of the world than being just another yoga teacher in New York City. And so next thing you know, I've been here 11 years. It wasn't really intentional. It's just while I was here, after 4 or 5 months, I noticed that, I could really make a difference. And I thought, okay, maybe I should hang out here for a bit. And so I went back to New York, and I gave back my apartment, and I came back.
Wow! And then when I think of Beirut, of course, thinking of the Middle East and all the challenges going on there, and I'm wondering if what unique challenges you find in teaching in Lebanon now versus when you're in New York City, the life as we know it in the U.S.
Of course, yes. It's a very good question because there are many things that I'm challenged by, but also that are part of. Oh, I can
There we
see you
are.
now.
This
Hey,
is Sujantra here, and this is Tom.
hi,
Okay,
hi, Tom.
there we
Hi,
go.
to
Good,
see you
good.
again. So yeah, there are many things that are extremely challenging being in this part of the world and being a yoga teacher. One of them, the first thing that I can think of comparing with the crowd or the yogis in the US is that I always tell my friends who live in New York and LA and everywhere in the US how easy they have it,
Mm,
to be teaching yoga there, because you're already addressing a crowd that has a certain sense of understanding of what it is that we're talking about.
right.
And the way that I teach yoga is definitely not about, it's not about the postures, it's not about performance, it's not about being able to stand on your hands or, do all the funky stuff, even though I do teach these things in class. But I really emphasize the importance of changing our minds,
Mm.
basically, in the world, especially this part of the world needs to change their mind and their outlook on life. And um, there are huge egos in this part of the world, everywhere, but
Uh-huh.
more specifically over here. So I'm really trying to bring the philosophy of yoga a lot more than the geometry of the postures and the asanas, and that's quite a challenge because we're dealing with type A personalities with very strong egos, as I said. And, people want to be able to do all these funky postures, and they're not interested in listening to philosophy, or, they don't really want to hear that. Some of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's been amazing because I think when, for anything that we do in life, when our intentions are in the right place, then people end up listening, and your message gets through. And that's really what I've been seeing over the past 11 years that I've been here. And it's really amazing to feel that you are contributing, as little as the contribution is, but you are contributing and shaping your community and your environment, and giving them tools to cope with. There's a lot of trauma in this part of the
Right.
world.
I was going to ask you about that. I would think there'd be a lot of big challenges and trauma and
There is, but we're also dealing with people who tend to run away rather than deal.
mm,
So it's always very difficult to get people to say, hey, sit down and look at yourself and assess where you've been at and where you are today and how you want to see the world. So these messages are always very difficult to get through to people in this part of the world. But I like that challenge, because it makes my work a lot more meaningful and
right.
important in this part of the world. Um, so that's one of the challenges. On a personal level, it was very difficult for me coming back to Beirut, because I had to deal with this mentality. And I could see on one level, as a yoga teacher who was giving back to her country and helping people to heal, that I was doing a lot of amazing things. But on a very selfish, so that's the altruistic part.
Right.
But on a very selfish level, until I brought myself to see that I was being very fulfilled by exactly that, by being able to actually contribute and making a change. I was looking at it from the perspective of, this country doesn't give me anything. I'm not growing. New York, in comparison, gives me so much, and I have access to so many amazing things and so many amazing teachers. And actually, maybe a couple of years after I got back, I realized that I was growing spiritually, probably a lot more than I would have being in New York, because of all that, because of this configuration and this mentality that was teaching me so much, and was also allowing me to put in application everything that I know, because
Mm,
that's really what yoga is about, right? It's not just accumulating knowledge, but it's also putting it in application. It's the yoga that is off the mat.
right.
Um, so yeah.
And at your studio, do you teach both asana? Do you teach pranayama? Any meditation? What are people receptive to?
They're receptive. Again, it has to do with the readiness of people. But for instance, the way that I design my classes is trying to bring about a full and complete experience.
Mm,
So I do chanting. I have my harmonium, and I chant at the beginning of class, and I make sure for people, and people sometimes, when it's their first time or their second time, feel a bit odd about chanting these words that they don't really know the meaning
right, because
of.
you've done a lot with Sharon and David
Yes, and
Life,
David.
and there's a lot of chanting in the Jiva Mukti tradition, and
Exactly, absolutely. And I also think it's important, because of the message that I'm trying to convey, that yoga is a way of life. It's not a workout.
mm,
So it's important to bring in all these elements, and then after chanting, I will follow with a little Dharma talk. There's a focus every week on different themes, and it's themes that people identify with. It's things that we all go through. They often come from sharing my own personal experience, which people are always pretty responsive to, because
right,
they can identify. I don't. I mean, I sometimes do theory because I think it's also interesting, but most often I'm going to, bring about the teachings of yoga through my own personal experience, because you can tell someone how amazing chocolate is, right? But you can't really tell them how amazing it is if you haven't tasted chocolate yourself.
right, right.
So I do that, and then I go into. I have two different levels of intensities to the classes that I teach. One is a pop and rock, so music is a very big element
Hmm.
in the classes that I teach, because music uplifts the spirit. And then I have another one, which is a honey flow, which is a more it's more meditative. It's a meditative flow, and we hold the postures a little bit longer so people really have the time to understand their geometry and explore who they are in that moment, a little bit more than just flowing. And I always, I will definitely throw in some pranayama along the way, and then I top off the practice with a shavasana, and then a tiny little meditation.
Uh-huh.
So that's the class that I teach. But the studio also hosts, all sorts of different workshops on very specific themes. And yes, of course, it encompasses breath work and meditation and asana from different methods of yoga.
And have any of your you list on your website? Actually, can you give us the address for your website and any other ways people can connect with you? We can pause for just a second. You can give those.
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yes. So it's the website is usyoga.wordpress.com.
Okay.
Simply because unionsquareyoga.com was not available because it's probably
some New York City company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the Instagram account is yoga_holic.
And how do you spell holic?
Holic, HOLIC.
And what does that mean?
Yogaholic.
Oh, yogaholic. Got it. Got it. I like. Okay, that's good. And so you list so many wonderful teachers you've studied with, from Sean Korn, Desiree Rumbaugh, Rod Stryker. Have any of those folks come over and done workshops at your studio?
Well, not yet. I have taken a few other workshops with Sean Korn when I was back in New York, and after I opened Union Square Yoga. Because prior to Union Square Yoga, I was teaching out of my home, and it was one of the only yoga studios in Beirut at the time.
Oh, back in 2005?
That was, from 2005 to 2013 when I opened Union Square Yoga.
Oh, so you just opened Union Square Yoga 3 years ago?
Yeah, but exactly. But I have been teaching. I mean, it was a full-fledged studio, except that it was in a residential building and it was out of my home. But I had, set it up as a yoga studio. So I did approach Sean and I said, please come and teach. Especially I really love the work that she does, and it resonates with me a lot. And I'm sure it can be of unbelievable benefit to people here. And, she said, I would love to, but, my schedule is booked for the next 2 years and it's going to be difficult. That's the trouble that I have with, with these teachers that I've had the tremendous honor and to take classes with and workshops, but they are always extremely busy. David and Sharon taught a workshop.
Nice. They came all the way
over. They did. It was part of the tour that they were having, and that was back in 2009. Wow. It was a 3-day workshop that I organized entirely from scratch, and it was amazing. The turnout was really beautiful.
Oh, nice.
Hala Khoury, which is not mentioned on my website, but who's a very close colleague to Sean Korn. She's originally Lebanese. And she actually reached out to me when she knew she was visiting Lebanon for the first time in a while. And she said, I've come across your website and I love what you do, and I would love to actually teach at your studio. And so she did. And that was at Union Square Yoga about a year and a half ago, a couple of years back. I can't really think from the top of my head who else, but Mark Whitwell. Are you familiar with Mark?
Sure.
Well, Mark and I are pretty close. We kind of were working on a project together, or had started working on it before I came to Beirut. And we lost touch because, we each went our separate ways and I came back here. But only recently, about 2 weeks ago, he sent me an email saying, I'm ready. I really want to come. I have to come. And I said, it would be amazing for you to come. So we're working on that for him to come to Beirut.
And you said in 2005 you were one of the only yoga studios. And now, are there more yoga studios in Beirut? Is it growing?
It's insane. It's growing like, mushrooms everywhere.
Oh, that's good. You were the pioneer.
Well, I'm happy, I'm happy to have brought awareness to people and continue to do so because it's very much needed here. So yes, I may have been among the first yoga teachers in Lebanon to dedicate her life fully to that. But today the result is that there are more and more people wanting to become teachers, yoga studios opening. The only problem is that there is a whole lot of supply, but not enough. The demand is not following suit.
Oh,
Um,
the interest from the people.
yes,
Oh,
because the way I see it is, it's very cultural. Yoga has sparked a very big interest in people, and more people are curious of it. But it's not the same type of behavior as in the U.S. Is that it's not their primary discipline. It's not
mm.
really a way of life.
Oh, I see.
It's still of the realm of a trend. Oh, you're practicing yoga, so yeah, maybe I'll go check it out because my friends are doing it. There's still that type of behavior going on, and I know in my body of students, people who have been with me for the past 11 years. Among I have a body of 600 or 700 students who sort of rotate.
Right,
I
great.
maybe 2 or 3% are considered hardcore practitioners.
Right.
The rest are people who are going to come and go or do it as a secondary discipline, as a supplement to something else. Um, so I think it's partly the reason why, and it hasn't reached. It's still pretty selective,
Hmm.
to practice yoga in this part of the world. It hasn't really reached the masses, which I am starting to be conscious of, and it's definitely something that I want to start. I mean, I've already. I don't know if you read that on the website or anywhere that I'm working with the Syrian refugee kids right now. I've been working with them and teaching them yoga for the past year and a half.
And
Um,
tell us about how do you do that? Do you go to where they are, or
yes, I go to the camps up in the Bekaa Valley, which is pretty far, and they have. I work with a local ONG that is affiliated to UNICEF, and they're amazing people because they've set up camps for the parents and the kids as their homes. But they've also education is a very big part of the work that they're doing, and beyond education, they're also extremely, um, you know, aware of the importance of therapy. So they're
mm,
bringing to these kids all forms of therapy through art. So
oh,
in their curriculum of education, there's art therapy, there's theater therapy, there's music therapy, all of these things. And when I reached out to them and I said yoga, and
right.
they were, they jumped, they jumped in joy, and it's been a wonderful experience. And I actually created a program that I call the Artistic Exchange Program, by which every time I go up, I try and gather different people who can actually teach them something. And no later than, actually, we were scheduled to have the interview on Tuesday.
Right.
And I had to postpone. I told Jacob I had to postpone because I had completely forgotten that I had a full day with them,
Oh,
with kids up in the Bika. And I brought in a friend of mine who's a famous artist in this part of the world, and a tap dancer who lives in the U.S., who lives in New Jersey, is of Lebanese origin and has already worked with refugee kids. So he came in and he taught them how to tap dance, and
oh, nice.
it's a lot of fun. It's really amazing.
Yeah, because here in San Diego, we have the big Veterans Administration hospital, and I know a
Mm.
number of teachers who go there and teach yoga to the veterans for them to deal with their trauma. Then on the other
Yes,
side of the world, yoga is helping all the children who are dealing with all the trauma. It's a good thing there's yoga in the world to help.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
this is perhaps the most meaningful part of my work in this part of the world because aside from helping these kids to heal, um, one of the byproducts of this work is healing myself as well for
right.
having been a child of war as well.
Oh,
So I I can really feel and I know what these kids are going through, and they are definitely deserving of attention and healing, rather than leaving all this trauma unaddressed, and that is going to backfire at some point later on when you're an adult if they don't have access. I was lucky enough to heal myself by discovering yoga
Right.
many years back, but it's beautiful, and it's very very important for me to be planting those seeds here. It makes a huge difference in the world, I think, or at least in this part of the world.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll be nice to see because it's nice to see that yoga's grown so much. And then, like you're saying, the next step is where it becomes a lifestyle. Because some of
Yes.
the, last week I did an interview with a 16-year-old who, she's 16, she's getting her teaching credential, she's teaching her friends, so right from the very beginning of her life, it's a whole avenue that she can see her life going in. And so many people are like that now. So, it can't be long till that starts to happen in other places also.
Absolutely. And as an extension of what it is that I'm doing with these kids, we're starting to work with a group of people. It's still in the workings. It's not final yet, but the idea has sprung to actually maybe create a yoga teacher training for these kids
Oh
so
yeah,
that they can teach other kids.
right,
So it's an amazing way to actually spread the practice, by giving them the tools to actually spread it if it resonates with them and it's something that they feel like doing.
right.
Um,
Teaching tomorrow's teachers.
yeah, exactly,
Oh, that's
exactly.
that's great. How inspiring! And can you tell us how can people find out about the work you're doing with the refugee children? Is that on your website, or how do they learn about
Um,
that?
I Every time I have an intervention, I go up. The next day I'm going to have a photo and a little post about the
Okay,
experience on my Instagram account that goes on my Facebook account.
okay,
Because I kind of intently choose not to advertise this
sure,
work. I want to keep it a very intimate experience. It's not really about you know letting the world know that I'm doing this type of work. It's really about going in, being with those kids, and showing them love, showing them that there are people on the outside who care about them, showing them that we're all the same. That when you put a group of people together and you get them to breathe and you get them to move their bodies and meditate, there is no separation anymore. It doesn't matter where we come from and who we are and what language we speak. And it's very interesting for me because Arabic is the language that I master the least,
uh-huh.
and so my vocabulary is pretty limited. And I teach these kids in Arabic.
Oh,
Somehow it's never a problem.
uh-huh.
I will always convey the message that I want to convey because it also translates on another level. There's this whole energetic exchange of love and openness. That's really what comes out in this type of work is the amounts of love that flow during these sessions are unbelievable, really amazing.
And tell us again your Instagram and your Facebook
Okay,
name,
so Instagram is yoga underscore holic,
right?
HOLIC,
Okay.
and my Facebook account is yogaholic, but and between brackets it's Danielle Abisaab. So it's
Yes.
my full name.
And Abisaab is spelled Abisaab.
Correct.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for talking to us. It's really inspiring. You're like a pioneer of yoga in the Middle East. It's really
Thank you
inspiring.
so much. I'm doing my best, and it's a wonderful experience, and I wouldn't want it any different. It's really nice, and I've come to terms with being in this part of the world because of that,
Right.
because of how important it is to give back and help people.
Yeah. Well,
So,
we create a podcast from our interview with you, and then we also do a transcription and we send it out to all of our members. We have members in 38 countries, so
amazing.
we really try and get out the inspiration that you're offering.
Thank you so much. Really,
Oh,
it's lovely. And if I do ever make it to the West Coast next time I'm in the US, because I'm an East Coast, sucker.
right.
When I go, I'm in New York, but I would love to come and visit you in person.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I had talked about eventually teaching a workshop or you know.
Sure, that'd be, and you could do that. We could do a workshop, and you could also just give a nice talk at our studio about your work and what you're doing and the whole world.
I would love to. It
Yeah.
would be awesome. It would be
Okay,
awesome.
it's a deal.
All right.
We'll look forward to hearing from you.
Wonderful. And will you let me know once it's up? Like, will you send me a link or something?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll
Okay.
come from Jacob and another fellow who works in the media, which is Atulia. They'll send you the links, and yeah, so we can share it.
Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
Danielle, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you.
Okay, see
Bye.
you later. Bye-bye.